Pregnancy is an emotional roller coaster. Listen, even though I know this watermelon looks super realistic, I'm not actually pregnant, but I do know from our own experience having 4 babies and then working with hundreds of moms here at Thrive, we understand and we get what that pregnancy journey looks like. And early on, there are so many emotions, so many conflicting emotions that come to mind as soon as you find out you're pregnant. You're excited, but you're kind of nervous, you're kind of scared, maybe you're relieved if you had a journey to get to that point. And you start to wonder, what is this kid going to be like? What do I want my pregnancy? What do I want my birth to be like? And then maybe even in the back of your mind, you're starting to think about, are we in the right school district? Am I going to homeschool? Do I need to start saving for a college education? There's so many thoughts that are going on in this emotional roller coaster that is pregnancy. What I want you to do, moms, is just take a breath. It's going to be okay. And I want to share this video as a guide. I want to give you a guide of what does it look like to build that amazing birth team out? What does it look like to accomplish the birth that you are really working towards? Maybe you've heard the phrase that birth is 80% mental and 20% physical. I would agree with that. You need to feel empowered, and how you feel emotionally and mentally in that journey has a huge bearing on how the actual physical experience of birth will go. It's going to be what sets your body up for success. Yes, there is some physical stuff that you need to do. We're going to talk about that in this little video here, but having that mental prep and that neurological prep allows that physical place to be as it's supposed to be, so that all you have to do is surrender to that process. So listen, in that amazing roller coaster of emotions that you're experiencing, there's ultimately just one question that you need to answer first, and that is, what kind of pregnancy, what kind of birth do you want to experience? And then tagged onto that is, who is going to help you accomplish that? The most common path that you're going to experience and that you're going to see, unless you work towards achieving something else, is not a great one. The medicalization of birth that has taken place over the last several decades is really not a journey that we love and that we are a fan of. There's so many more births that are ending in C-sections. It's a third of births now. 75% are getting an epidural. I think it's about a third, maybe 30% are getting induced. There's way more messing with and intervening with birth than there should be. And then afterwards, that's not going so well. We've got, the official statistics are 1 in 7 moms who deal with some sort of postpartum mood or anxiety disorder afterwards. I think it's higher than that, right? That's the people that are seeking out care, that are reaching out for help. Reality, there's so many more people that are struggling, that never talk to somebody, that never reach out and never get the help that they need. So I would argue that common path that everyone else is experiencing is not one that you want to go on. And it's not the path that is really what birth is designed for. And that's where we need to think about this differently. There's a difference between common and normal, right? Just because this pregnancy experience that we've laid out is very common, right? It's the majority of births at this point are getting messed with and getting intervened with, does not mean that that is normal. It does not mean that that is what birth should be. So that's what we're here for. Listen, everybody doesn't have to have the same birth experience that we did, right? Everybody doesn't have to have a completely unmedicated natural home birth, but what you do need to do is have an empowered birth. And that means you need to be informed. That means you need to be educated on the different decisions that you might face. And you need to have a team that is supportive. You need to have a team around you that is going to help you achieve that goal. So the other missing piece of all of this, that birth process, it's not just affecting you, mom. That is the most important missing piece that is affecting baby's health. We work with a ton of newborns and kids, and what we see over and over and over again is that the most missing piece of that kid's health is how the birth went. It's the one that nobody's talking about, nobody's looking into. They don't realize that pregnancy stress, the birth intervention, the birth trauma is immensely impacting that kid's health. Early on, that looks like probably latching and feeding struggles, maybe colic, reflux, they don't sleep super well, just a stressed out little baby. Those are the kids that often start after a stressful birth process, and they turn into typically a struggling toddler. Maybe they got chronic ear infections, asthma and allergies, respiratory challenges, coughs and colds are just always the norm for them. They can never get ahead of it, they can never kick it. Those those immune challenges early on will then frequently turn into different neurodevelopmental struggles when the kid gets to school age. ADHD, anxiety, sensory processing disorder. We see so much of this connected to that rough start to life. So takeaway from all of that doom and gloom is that this matters. This is worth thinking about, and it's worth working towards an ideal experience, so that this bump, which I've only had on for, maybe 20 minutes here before shooting this video, it's already getting uncomfortable. There is a better way, right? You don't have to be as miserable as pregnancy typically is, and as I feel right now. So what does that look like? Let's talk about the benefits of prenatal chiropractic. I think of that in 5 simple categories. Step 1 is exactly what I just mentioned, It's pain relief. It's hurting less. It's hard to have all these amazing and wonderful things beyond just hurting when you're in pain all the time, right? The low back and pelvis pressure, the shooting pain down your legs, the round ligament tension in your belly. There are so many common aches and pains in pregnancy that don't have to be that way. They're not normal. Yes, your best case scenario pregnant is never going to be as good as you feel not pregnant, because you've got this watermelon-sized human in the way, and they're adding pressure, and there's hormone changes that create this different imbalance in your body. There's so many things that are shifting that you're going to feel different. But we have so many moms that have come through Thrive that do amazing in pregnancy because they've taken care of their body. They're getting adjusted. It may be prenatal yoga or prenatal massage, pelvic floor PT. They're doing other things to help support their body and prepare for that awesome experience as well. So step one is just hurting less. We got to get you out of that rut that you're probably in. And the second piece of that is, how do we optimize your pelvis for that pregnancy and birth experience? So think about that with me here. If I can bend over and reach my pelvis right now, this is where the front of your pelvis would be, the back is towards me, and a baby is hanging out up top in that uterus. To come out of the birth canal, we've got to go down and out through that birth outlet. If everything is going as well and moving as well as it should, and there's balance and ease in the pelvis, I'm not going to say birth is easy, but it's definitely easier, right? We have as much open as possible. Compare that to if we have a shift, torsion, tension, some sort of abnormal structure in your pelvis and low back. It doesn't make birth impossible, but it's certainly not a helpful factor. And it's way harder to accomplish that ideal positive birth experience. And then that relates to what a lot of people think of when they think of prenatal chiropractic, which is baby positioning in utero. We see babies maybe turn head down or turn into that proper position from a breech or a transverse lie into that ideal head down posture when we release that pressure in their pelvis, when we allow their body to be at ease. Chiropractic is not a baby turning technique, but when we release that pressure on the body knows what to do, right? Our bodies are so amazingly intelligent. They're so well designed. Just like you didn't have to wake up every day of your pregnancy and tell your brain to send a message to the baby of 5 fingers on each hand and the liver goes on the right and anything else. That same intelligence knows how to get baby on the outside. We just have to make sure that there's nothing getting in the way of that. So we're gonna have pain relief. We're gonna optimize that pelvis positioning. And then we want to ease postpartum recovery. Let's get ahead of some of those struggles that are going to show up postpartum. Everyone's experience is demanding to a certain extent, right? Because you just had a pretty significant day, right? Any birth, even the most amazing, beautiful chill of births, is still a big deal. So you've gone through that experience. Any extra intervention, any extra trauma of tearing, or obviously C-section, stitches, that's going to add to that postpartum recovery journey. So we want to set you up for success by having birth be as boring as possible. Less interventions mean less to recover from. The other thing that's really not thought about a ton from mom's perspective is how much their body feels beat up after birth. There is a ton of relief because you got this big baby out of the way, but usually pelvis and low back, sometimes tailbone are really feeling it. And even more frequently, this upper back, that base of the neck area, if you've had a kid before, you know it, that is wrecked because you are here, you're hunched over holding a baby all the time, you're nursing or just cuddling them, and that upper back and shoulders get so beat up. And so those are things we want to get on top of and allow mom to be prepared for that easy postpartum journey by setting them up for success beforehand. So pain relief, optimized pelvis positioning, that postpartum recovery. And then step 4 has to do with more of that neurological response. That's calming stress and anxiety. For a lot of people, birth is not a relaxing state. Maybe they had complications trying to get pregnant, they had a fertility journey, or they've had 1 or 2 abnormal findings in an ultrasound and it's set them spiraling. Unfortunately, our medicalization of birth and the way that we handle that doesn't really help, right? Even some of the resources available, that common popular book called What to Expect When You're Expecting, not a big fan. I think it's more of a Stephen King novel of everything that can go wrong in your pregnancy, not a supportive, empowering, positive resource. So what we need to do is think about how do we regulate that stress response. You'll hear us talk about it at Thrive as the gas pedal versus the brake pedal. Your gas pedal is that fight or flight, stress, sympathetic nervous system. That is okay if you need to fight against the bear or survive in the wilderness. You need that survival mode turned on, but that's not what we need in birth. We need to be in an eased, balanced, relaxed state. And that brake pedal, parasympathetic, calming state, that's rest, relaxation, sleep, energy, digestion, relaxation, all of the good stuff that we need is going to live in that brake pedal. So this gas versus brake balance is everything. And that's really the secret hack of chiropractic, is it's yes about feeling better, but even more so than that, it's about a regulated, balanced nervous system. If your nervous system is in fight or flight, if that's in stress, even all the physical stuff that you can do is going to be putting you behind the eight ball, because you're going to be struggling to just relax, let go, and surrender to that birth experience. Even if personality-wise you're not someone who's anxious and stressed, if physiologically, internally, you're feeling that, your body's still gonna act that way. And that's, we'll get to in a second, that's one of the scans that we do in the office, is we actually measure and track how is your nervous system adapting to stress, and how do we optimize that for your overall wellness, but specifically for that birth experience. So last step, number 5, the last benefit here is actually for baby. It's allowing that baby to really be at their best and have the healthiest start to life possible. I hinted at that a little bit ago. Think about it from my baby Sophia perspective. If in that birth process, instead of being pushed through the womb and through that birth canal with those contractions, if we are born via forceps, vacuum extraction, C-section, or just hands-on, it's not being pushed out, it's we're pulling, we're grabbing that head and neck and then pulling, usually pulling, turning, and twisting to get that baby out of the birth canal. You guys would never let me do a video here where I grabbed a baby by the head and the neck, let alone pulled on the other side, but that's what happens in birth. It's not that our birth providers are bad people, it's just that the consequences and the trauma that takes place in that, no one's really trained to look at the damage that that causes and how it relates to this upper neck regulation center. This brainstem area that the hands, the forceps, the vacuum is touching, that base of the brain is where all of the calming, regulating, brake pedal functions that we just talked about live. There's a nerve called the vagus nerve, comes out of the base of your skull, runs right by those first couple neck structures, and that is the key regulation center. That is the calming influence that your body needs. So when we have that rough birth trauma and rough start to life, it sets up the stage for a kid that is struggling and dealing with way more challenges than they should. So be aware of that and be looking for it, because it's easy to miss something that you're not looking for. And that's the issue we have right now. Pediatricians aren't trained to look back at birth and say what happened in the birth process and how does that affect the struggles that that baby's dealing with. And then your birth providers who know what happened, they're not following that kid's development and lifespan. They don't know what they're dealing with either. So we've got to connect the dots and realize that those things are affecting each other. So listen guys, build your birth team. You gotta work at this mental prep too. You've gotta get your physical body in order and you've gotta regulate that neurology here. So I hope these 5 benefits, those 5 tips helped. I hope this is a jump starting for you building out a positive, empowering birth team. You can have an amazing birth experience in any environment with any group of people around you. It's just a matter of how much do you have to swim upstream? How much do you have to fight against the norm and the current of whatever environment you're in? Or are you in one that is supporting you along the way of whatever goals you have for your birth? So think about that and work towards that positive birth experience. Reach out to Thrive if you don't have that prenatal chiropractor as a piece of the birth team already. That is such a key one, because that nervous system regulation, that pelvis balancing is at the root of so many of these frequent birth and pregnancy struggles that you're going to deal with. So at the very least, to just survive pregnancy and feel good in this journey, you're going to want a prenatal chiropractor on the team. But it's way more than just not hurting. It has to do with how do you really optimize for that wellness. So don't skip that step. Reach out to our team, reach out to the office here. We'll answer any questions about what does a prenatal adjustment look like, right? If I was going to lay on the table with this bump, it's going to be pretty uncomfortable. That's what pregnancy pillows are for. Adjustments are completely safe for mom and baby. They're completely appropriate for any season of life. We just adapt technique and protocols accordingly there. So reach out to the office if you have questions. We cannot wait to meet you soon and help you thrive.